Hi, my name is Mckenzy and I will be interviewing my grandma Louise. Grandma, what was your life like when you were a kid?
I was always a town kid. I was the middle of 3 children. I had a sister 1 year older than I and a brother 3 years younger. And we played in the sand pile. We played with dolls. And we had a wagon and tricycles and things like this. In the wintertime, of course, there was no TV, but we listened to the radio. And sometimes we had, it was like, I don't know, a checkers game, this kind of thing. My family were not card players, but a lot of people were. My mother was excellent pianist, and she could play anything she ever heard. So music was a big part of my life. And I started taking piano lessons when I was around 6 years old. I was never naturally talented. My sister was. But we would play piano duets, and as I grew older, then she played organ at church, and I played the piano. And what else do you need to know?
Where did you and Grandpa first meet?
Oh, Mckenzy. Well, I've always worked from the time I was 8th grade on, and I worked at the checkout counter at a grocery store. And that was winter and summer, and my folks lived 3/4 of a mile from town. It was on a highway. But I would have to walk home, and this was dark when I get off at 6 o'clock. Well, anyway, I had a date, this really handsome guy. His name was Cliff, and he was really something. So he stood me up, and so I was telling him off. Well, he had taken his friend George, had an emergency appendix taken. His appendix was taken out in emergency surgery, and that's why George couldn't pick me up from work that night. So, or Cliff couldn't pick me up. So I happened to be in Seneca at a basketball game. So the hospital was not very far from the auditoriums or the gym, and so I went over there to tell Mr. Barrett off. And I don't know, I kind of liked that guy, and he was really polite, and felt sorry and all that kind of thing. So then he found out a little bit more about me, so when I would get off work, there he was with this good-looking car, and he would pick me up and he would take me home that 3/4 of a mile. And this went on for quite some time, and then we had dates at that time, the only dates you had were movies, and it would just be a Saturday night type thing. So then this goes on, and we get on into late March and decide to get married. Well, I'm still in high school, and he's living with his folks, so I really need to finish school. So you might say, eloped and went up to Hiawatha. He had made the arrangements before and got the license, and he talked to the minister of the Congregational Church up there. So it was on Easter. We were going to get married on Easter Sunday, which was April the 6th. But I had to sing in the choir there at Centralia. So my folks went on, and they wanted me to go to church when they went. And I said, nope, I'm waiting on him if I have to wait all day. And so then he came. He was late. Well, he had forgotten the ring, and he had to go back and get it, the wedding ring. So that's what made him late. So they were waiting with my robe, ready for me to just jump into it when I got there. So then afterwards we stopped at my aunt's, the big family gathering there, and my cousin said later, says, those kids are up to something. But anyway, then we drove on to Hiawatha and got married. I go back to school, and he's working for his brother on a farm, and he's gonna farm. Well, one year it rained so much we didn't raise anything. The next year it was so dry we didn't raise anything. So then he decided that he would go to barber school. He had a brother who was a barber. So he went to school in Wichita, and I stayed up there on the farm, and with very little to eat. And the guy we lived on his place, well, he didn't charge any rent or anything like that, but Then we had this little girl, and she went to live with her aunt in Marion to go to kindergarten. We didn't have a kindergarten there. And then my aunt, who would work for a Slimmaker dress factory in Holton, she said, "Why don't you go down there, Louise, and you can get a job there." So I did, and Mr. K, he said, could you start work? Could you start tomorrow? And I said, well, yes. So then I worked there. I worked at Slimmakers for about 5 years, and I had just, I worked at the bundle table. This is when they get maybe 800 of one kind of dresses, all different sizes, come in from Kansas City, and we had to separate them. So all the yellow ones would go at one side, would be together, you know. So I really enjoyed that. And then one time, one of his supervisors was going to be gone on vacation. He asked me, he said, "You sew, don't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I've always made my own clothes." He said, "Then Olive is going on vacation. Could you do section C, which was a fancy section of the whole factory?" And I said, "Well, I'll need lots of help." So he said, "Oh, you'll have help. Marietta will help you." Well, I never ever got back to the bundle table, and I was a supervisor from then on. And then George had gone to barber school, and then he had a job at Fort Riley. His brother was a barber. So at this time, while we moved down here, and this was in 1962, Denise was 10 years old at that time. And we've lived here ever since. And then 3 years later, then we had Kirby, which happens to be Mckenzy's dad. So anyway, they are 12 years apart, my children are. So then that's about all I can tell you, I guess.
A special thanks to my Grandma Barrett. She's 83 and was born and raised in Kansas. Thank you, Grandma.